Hi there, it's that build guy. Bungie finally confirmed that Starfire protocol is getting nerfed, and you know us Warlocks, we like our boom booms. With that in mind, I have an absolutely insane, dummy strong build for you. This build will give you Cure, Restoration ×2, pretty much infinite ability spam, solar ignitions, and full-on explosions on command. If that sounds like something you want, stay with me for this build video. But before we move on, make sure you hit the like and sub to my channel for more Destiny content. Now let's get into it. I'll start with the exotic of choice since it's the main piece of our build. For this one we're going to use Sunbracers. Their effect is Helium Spirals, which increases the duration of your solar grenades, gives you fast bow inherently for free, and the important part, upon a powered melee kill you'll get a 5-second buff called Sunbracers ready. After you throw your first solar grenade, this will activate Helium Spirals and will allow you to throw solar grenades with basically no cooldown for 5 seconds. Something interesting actually happens. The kill doesn't need to come directly from your melee exactly. During testing I found that a kill coming from the Scorch that comes from your powered melee will also count towards the activation of Helium Spirals. In low level content this is not as impactful, but as we go higher up the ladder of difficulty it becomes more and more valuable. As you can see in the gameplay, due to our aspects and fragments setup, all abilities are up pretty much constantly, but you do need to play a little bit riskier since you'll have to stay in the air for extended periods of time to extend your buff stacks. So let's cover the aspects and fragments before we move on to the gameplay loop and tie this whole thing together in a tight little bow. For the super we're going to use Well of Radiance for obvious reasons. It gives us more immortality, more damage, and it charges quicker. For the class ability, pick Phoenix Dive. I know it sounds weird, but trust me on this one. For the melee, take Incinerator Snap since it does a bit more damage and it covers a wider area. For the grenades, obviously pick Solar Grenades as our exotic works with them. For the aspects, pick Touch of Flame, which will give your solar grenades a longer duration, and they will now also start emitting blobs of fire from their location for extra damage. For the second aspect, go with Heat Rises, which allows you to eat your grenade in order to get a Heat Rises buff and also cures you, which is Destiny's instant heal effect. With this buff you also have higher airborne effectiveness. Its duration can be extended via airborne kills, which will also grant you melee energy. For fragments, go with Ember of Ashes, which will increase the amount of scorch stacks you apply to your targets with solar abilities. Then Ember of Empyrean, which will increase the duration of restoration and radiant buffs upon solar weapon or ability kills. After that, Ember of Solace, which extends the duration of radiant and restoration effects applied to you. And for the final fragment, you can go with Ember of Torches, which will make you radiant on powered melee hits, or Ember of Resolve, which will give you cure upon grenade final blows. For lower end content, both are great. Honestly, Resolve in my opinion is a bit better since it gives you great healing, but Radiant is a very good buff to have on command. For the weapon loadout, I would highly recommend you go with Sunshot as it will create explosions upon kills, and we've already established that we are after a Michael Bay type of gameplay. Another great option is the Callus Mini tool with Incandescent. For the heavy, go with either a Solar Rocket with Demolitionist and a damage buff, or Cataclysmic God Roll with 4th times the charm and bait and switch. Now let's move on to the gameplay loop portion of the video where we tie everything together. The way this build works is overloaded, but once you get the hang of it, it's worth the time investment. First, you'll eat your nade before going into an engagement. If you've already taken some damage, this will also cure you. From then on, shoot a red bar once or twice to bring its health down, then melee it while you're in mid-air. This will do two things. One, it will extend your Heat Rises buff, and two, it will also activate Sunbracers. After that, you can either Phoenix Dive, as with Heat Rises active it will apply Restoration ×2 on you, or you can just start spamming nades. Restoration ×2 is difficult to break through as your health gets restored quickly, and in higher end content it's a big buff to your survivability. Because of the combination of fragments in the build, your buff's duration will double on each solar kill. Your solar grenade kills will also cure you if you go with Ember of Resolve, so you will be pretty much immortal with the entire stack of buffs. Not to mention that solar nades with Touch of Flame do really high damage, which if you direct towards a boss is significant. You will clear rooms with little trouble. Sunshot is great here since it provides you with a massive area of effect damage and honestly is just freaking fun. Also, don't forget that solar ignitions will stun unstoppable champions, and while you're radiant you will also break through anti-barrier champions' shields. This utility will serve you well in lost sectors. I've tested this build in a master lost sector and it's not easy to die with it. As long as you keep an eye on what's shooting you and from where, you will just need to get your rotation in once. After that, just pepper the area with solar boom booms and clear the room. Seasonal / at level content is a joke with this build. build, even though it's not saying a lot as most at level content is not that difficult once you get your bearings. I cannot wait for the UI overhaul we should get coming next season, as that will make keeping track of your buffs much easier. But right now what you need to look out for is for the heat rises buff to be active and for your restoration ×2 buff to keep on getting extended. The more difficult the content, the faster you will die, so making sure resto is up will be extremely important. Don't forget that your incinerator snap is not that powerful, even though it looks dope and it feels great to be Ray Mustang. That's why you should always damage red bars first before hitting them with the melee, just to ensure your buff comes in. Something cool that you can take advantage of is that while heat rises is active, your Phoenix dive will not only give you restoration ×2, but it will also emit a wave of fire from your landing point. You can use that after a snap to kill an enemy with it. From my testing, as long as the kill comes from the scorch applied by your melee, you will get the Sunbracers buff. I've also seen it work after finishing an enemy with Sunshot after hitting a snap, but that is far less consistent, so it won't be something you can rely on. In a raid environment, I think this build is absolutely nutty, especially if there are adds near the boss, since you will be able to use your grenades on the boss for massive damage output. Just make sure you throw them on the ground or on the ceiling above the boss, just so you avoid messing with your teammates' rockets or whatever else they're using. And with that covered, we can move on to the armor mods, which will just complete the build. On the helmet, put on Ashes to Acids twice, which will give you super energy on grenade kills, and then put on a Harmonic Siphon because that will give you orbs of power on solar weapon kills. On the Sunbracers, put on Firepower because that will generate an orb of power on grenade final blows, then put on Bolstering Detonation, which will give you class ability energy on grenade final blows, and then Momentum Transfer, which will give you melee energy on grenade final blows. On the chest, go with Charged Up, which will increase the maximum stacks of armor charge you can carry, and then put on all the resistance mods you can, which are appropriate for your activity of choice. On the legs, we go with 2 stacks of Solar Weapon Surge, which will increase our solar weapon damage while we have armor charges with 17%. And then we go with Stacks on Stacks, which will give us an extra armor charge every time we pick up an orb of power. Finally, on the class item, we'll go with Outreach twice, which will reduce our melee cooldown whenever we use our class ability, and then Utility Kickstart, which will give us some ability energy for our class ability every time we use it. As you can see from the mods, we just lean into our grenades and they'll reduce all of our cooldowns, so we'll have our abilities up pretty much constantly. And that's about it for the build, Guardian. I hope you liked it. If you did, make sure you hit the like for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to my channel if you want to get some more Destiny 2 content. Eyes up, Guardian, and I'll see you in the next one.